So at some point, finances are a serious source of stress for most marriages. But even if things feel really tight, there are some things you can do to help the two of you get on the same page about money and start making some progress. And that's why today we're sharing some of the simple strategies to help manage money well together in your marriage. To help you do that, we've created a great resource called 27 Money Questions Every Couple Needs to Ask. Make sure to check the link in today's show notes. If you want some help to just start talking about money and not fighting about it, that's exactly what this resource is for, just to help you discuss questions that will help you get on the same page. See the link in today's show notes to grab that resource. So, Dr. Kim, will you share with us about how you and Nancy build your budget?
Sure. I mean, obviously, we got to know how much we make. And so mine is pretty well set. Nancy, being in real estate, hers is going to vary and does vary from year to year. So, but we really try to budget pretty much on what I make, and then anything that she makes, we do extra things with that. Sometimes depending, what it is and how much it is, trips, or sometimes it's something for the house or something, things like that. So income, taxes, that's going to come around somewhere. So try to set aside money for taxes. And the tithe, there's always this argument between more before and after taxes. We can talk about that later, but the tithe. And then we've got our fixed expenses that we know we're going to have to pay every month. The mortgage, the utilities, gas bills, things like that, which I think helps now because I think all of our utilities now we're able to do where it's a flat fee each month, so it doesn't vary, which makes it so much easier to budget if you can have that happen. And then other expenses, and then what's left. If we're in the red, then we know we got to cut something or make more money. Or if it's positive, what do we do with that? Do we invest it? Do we save it? Do we give it? Things like that. So we just try to look pretty realistically. I mean, over where we are now, I think we don't have as many variable things as we did when kids were growing up in the house, because things with kids always come up that you think, I thought we had everything covered and we didn't know about this. Or how did we forget about prom dresses? Or, things that that just kind of come up. So that's pretty much it. It's figuring out what we've got, the taxes, tithe, all those things, our fixed expenses, what goes into our other expenses, and then what do you do with what's left, which if you get to the point where you've got something left, that's really a lot of fun, because we've had fun with giving. We've had fun with doing different things with that extra money. One year we found about a lady in our church, a single mom who thought to get her electricity cut off, and going through the church, she never knew it was us, and we paid her bills and got her caught up. And that was just it's something we always are trying to look ways to help people. But there's something about when you can help somebody and they don't know you did it. That's kind of cool, because I remember her walking up to me one day and she said, "Oh, we had such a blessing. We got our electric bill. We're back on top." I said, "That is so good. God's so good." And just to be able to do that and not go, "Yeah, I did that." No, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like it's God doing it. He used you to do it. And there's something really special when those things happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is. Well, so that's the fun part, right? So like you get to the fun part, but you didn't start with the fun part, did you? I mean, was it fun when you started?
Oh, we didn't. No, we didn't. And neither one of us had really, both of us had checking accounts, but basically, I mean, I worked in the summers but didn't do the school year. Nancy was the same. So, our parents really helped us a lot before we got married. And so it was kind of like, oh, that ended, didn't it? And so our budget starting out was just kind of figuring out. I think we were so lean and everything. Our first apartment, we had a dinette, a sofa, a TV, a bed, 2 lamps. Our nightstands were boxes. Our dresser was suitcases. And we lived like that for quite a while. And so it was like, I think the one smart thing we did, we didn't go into debt starting out. We started just saving and saying, okay, what do we need first? Well, because I think we bought chairs for the living area in our apartment first, because when people came over, we had to move the dinette chairs into the living room so people have a place to sit. And so, we just kind of made what do we want, and kind of went from there. But, when you're looking back, I think it taught us something. I think the fact that when we got married, credit cards weren't used with ease like they are now.
Right.
And so I think for both of us, like, okay, we need to save before we buy things. So I think that constraint helped us to not get into debt. And then when we did finally get credit cards, I told the story, we got 1 month or one time with one card. I had some things on it, and it was more than Nancy knew that it was. And so we had to work out of that. Otherwise, most of our decisions were pretty good with that. I know we're going to talk about tithing later, so I'll save some of that. But I think it isn't just figuring out. It's just how many things you begin to add to your budget that are they necessary or not to?
Right.
One of the things that we never cut was money for entertainment. We felt like it was always important to have a date. And so we always had money for that. And it might have been the dollar movie and McDonald's, but we had the money in there for it. And I think that was really important. And I stress that with couples now. Don't do your budget so tight that you can't go out and do something together. You know, even if it's just going somewhere and you have ice cream or whatever it is, just make sure you've got built in something each week that you guys can just spend some time together and not have to worry about it.
That's so good. Those are really good starting places. And I think that's good too, because, if you're starting this from scratch, you're not at the fun part yet, where you've got extra and you're able to have surplus and give. But I think almost anybody can get there, even in very humble means. There are ways to be really mindful about it, because then if you have that generous mindset, you are more generative. We'll get to more of that too as we go on, but there's something about that scarcity when you just feel like you have to hold so tightly and not have room for all these things. I've seen a lot of people who spend so much time looking all over town for the best deal and everything. And it's like, well, the amount of time you spent doing that, the gas you spent in your car, to save that $5, whatever it was, that might not be the best use of your time, your energy. And so when you look into things that are really important and really vision centered with what we can do with our money, you can make, I think, a lot more progress a lot more quickly.
I do too. Absolutely. And I think you mentioned generosity. I think if we have that attitude, I just think it puts a whole different spin on it, perspective on it. And I think we are more aware of God's blessings in the whole thing. When we really look, that basically in the country that we live in with world standards, everybody would be considered rich. There's people in countries that would think everybody here in this country is rich. I mean, heard Andy Stanley talk about it. It's like he said the first time he was talking to somebody in some, I guess, third world country, and the rest of it at his house, and they go, "You have a house for your car?"
Oh, wow!
The whole concept of a garage just was,
Yeah.
So sometimes I think we need to keep that perspective too.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's funny because I'm calling out the scarcity, but that's really where I come from. That's where my story with like the way I viewed money was that you have to just really try to get the best deal at whatever cost. And then when I would buy things like, for example, just like having the grocery budget, it was important to stay on budget. But then I would buy, say, if I had snacks for the kids and we had a play date, I'd be like, oh no, we're going to eat too many of the snacks. It's going to cut into the amount I was supposed to, I'd get really worried about those things. But when you think about, how much was that box of goldfish? It was probably $2. That's something we can be a little more generous with than I wanted to be. And it freed me up a lot when I was able to start letting go of those sort of measured, scarce mentalities about things. Yeah. So I'm just speaking from experience because I used to value, those $2 way more than I should, when really valuing the friendships and the time and all those things. That's, I think, a lot more important in the long run.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I think so. And knowing that, $2 bucks of goldfish, great.
Yeah.
And just what it does for that you can have kids over and you can have your kids can enjoy and they can see your home and they can see you guys as a family and just all the blessings that come out of those kind of things really makes a difference.
Yes. And to become, I saw myself, the person who I was with regard to that generosity or my lack of generosity. It was like, that's not who I want to be. I really don't want to be that person who's counting goldfish.
Yeah. Cause you miss out on the really important things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because
yes.
you're so focused on that you
Yes.
miss out what's right in front of you sometimes.
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
very much
that's
so.
really good, Lindsay. Yeah. So how did just God teach you? Did you just evolve out of that? How did you get from where you were to where you are today?
Well, I think I saw it in myself, and I could see it in some other people too. I feel like the scarcity mentality, when I started to see that and to see that, the way that it would cause stress, or the way that it would cause a lack of generosity, or a lack of sharing, a lack of willingness to open the home, I was like, that's just not where I want to be. And really, it's great for me because Brian's so different. He is just so generous. And so sometimes that was really stressful to me, and I'd be like, save the goldfish. And he's like, who wants goldfish? And it could happen in so many ways. And it's funny that, of course, you talk about being married, there's always going to be some difference there, but really kind of seeing his approach to, he would say that it's not worth your time to go all over town for the $5 savings. It's really not. He's like, you got to value your time too and put things in perspective. So just learning a little healthier perspective, I think, and too, knowing that God is generous. He's so generous. And that's really what we want to emulate too.
Exactly. That's good. Because I think the fact that you saw it and you worked on it instead of getting stuck there, because I would think over time that could be pretty miserable.
I think so.
Because of what you miss out on. Maybe you don't know what you're missing out on as much.
Right.
And maybe you saw that in Brian, maybe because of who he was, that you're thinking, he's having a lot more fun here than I am. I'm counting goldfish and he's throwing the box at him.
Right. Right. Yes. That constant stress, that's just not a good look. No. That's not good. No. So let's talk about some other strategies for budgeting. Have you seen any apps, any programs, any specific tools you've seen be helpful?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've talked about off and on is having this kind of threshold with money that you discuss about things. In other words, if it's over a certain amount that you're going to agree that you're going to talk about before you make that. And I think that just takes you decide on the threshold together. You talk about it together, and I think you want to be open, empathetic, and understanding. But you're making it together, and that you make a huge purchase and you bring it home and you haven't consulted with your spouse about it. Well, how's it going to go over? What if they had their mind thinking, "Hey, I know we've got some extra money right now. I want to talk to my spouse about doing this with it," and all of a sudden, you're parked in front of the house, putting your new boat in front of the house, and they're thinking, "Hey,
surprise!"
Surprise!
Wow.
Something like that. I think staying on top of it together. Except for we had about 3-year period, probably when I was in seminary, that Nancy did all the finances. But I enjoy it more than she does it, so I've pretty much always done it. But it's always like she is part of it. She knows where we are. She knows where everything is. She can come and look at anything anytime she wants to, because you want both of you to be informed, because then when it comes to making that decision, you already have the knowledge together. And I know some couples that set aside time maybe each week or each month just to do that. Hey, let's look at where we are. I think that's a great idea, and make a date out of it. Sit down together, go over that, and then go have dinner or go have ice cream or do something. Make it kind of, okay, this is what we do, and then I think it gets you both on the same page. You both know where you are, and so when something happens that next month or that next week, you kind of already have in mind what you're going to do and what you can do and what you can't do. So I think that's a really good habit to get into. There are some great budgeting software apps, some that I've found that seem to be really popular. You Need a Budget, Honeydew, Good Budget. It just helps you track your expenses and then stay on top of your goals. And I think leverage technology to make it easier. When we first started doing budget and stuff, it was all pencil and paper, or it was pencil because we did a lot of erasing. Couldn't be a pen, and so many tools that make it better. Much easier. If you do what Dame Ramsey, and for a time you're writing down everything you spend, it's a heck of a lot easier to do it in an app than other ways like that. So I think those are really good. And I think making sure continue to talk about what are our financial goals. And how do those wrap up with what our values are for our family, And I think it's always good to decide, what are our goals for our family? What are our goals this year, 5 years. Not that you get bound by them, but to kind of give you a direction. And then I think the finances kind of go along with that. Well, yeah, if they're one of our goals that we want our kids before they leave home to visit every state. Okay. So, how do we do that, and what trips, and how do we budget to do those kind of things? So, kind of working on that together, so that, because sometimes I think people, I remember a few times we did, and we were tight on money, we'd spend on other things, and somebody would say they did this with their kids, and we're thinking, oh man, that what a great experience. That would be so good for family and kids, and we don't have them do it. And so if you're doing a little planning and knowing kind of what your goals are, I think that really helps. I think it does help to kind of have a roadmap that you both want your kids to, things you want them to experience before they leave home. Obviously the first one is understanding what it means to have a relationship with Jesus. But other things too, that you want them just to have an awareness and experience some things. And so you want to make sure. So if you have some of those goals, I think it's easier to plan some of those things.
I think so.
I think you got to have an emergency fund, because if you don't, you're going to pull out a credit card and maybe put something on it that you think, I wish we had the money to do this. So if you can maybe shoot for 3 months, if you can get up to 6 months of kind of what your budget is, and have that just as a financial security fund, I think that gives you a really safety net that makes you feel really comfortable. Well, no, we don't want to have an emergency happen, but if it does, if the air conditioner goes out and it's summer and it's 110 degrees out, it says it's going to be that way for the next 6 weeks, then you want to make sure you've got that money there to replace it or to do what needs to be done. And then I think just always being transparent. And most couples like us, I mean, we know if there's debt, we're going to know what it is. But, some people bring debt into marriage. I think that without telling their spouse, I think that's a terrible thing to do, because at some point they're going to know that. And I've seen couples do that. We talk about that a lot in premarital counseling. And some people have debt. Some of it's student debt, loan debt, stuff like that. But what's the plan to get it? Just get it on the table and say, okay, this is what I've been doing on it. I'm behind on this. I'm ahead on this. My plan is to have it paid off in 2 years. I had one couple that I work with. It was really cool. And so she had some student debt, and she'd paid a lot of it down. And she said, but I'm going to, I want to continue to pay that when we're married. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to pay that off for you. It's because I want us to go into, again, he could, he was, never.
That's cool.
And he said, I don't want us to carry that into marriage. I want us to have a bottom line there that's just clean for both of us. And so if she hadn't brought that out, I think it helped her see, oh my gosh, I've got somebody that really loves me, that's very generous, and will work to help me on things. So it did more than just eliminate her debt. I think it really helped the way she framed this guy she was going to marry. And I think for him, it was, I want her to know how much I love her, and I want her to know that I'm there to come alongside her and to help her with things. And if I can, I'm going to do whatever I can to help her. And so it was really a cool thing for their future marriage too, I think, in something like that. And so that's, I guess I say that because when we're talking about money and stuff, there's so many fights about money, and to realize that you can turn that around, and it can be a positive thing for your marriage if you just do some of the things we're talking about today.
That's such a good point, because, you talked about the goal setting, and I think that's another great hack to get to that shared value instead of fighting about different values.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the fights come from, like you said, like, do you have a surprise boat, or do you have like something you work on together? Different values, each person valuing different things, which is just part of being humans. And
Absolutely.
So I think anytime we can get those shared goals, it does more than, like you said, it does more than just the finances. It's the teamwork. It's working, together, knowing you're on the same page. That's so important and so helpful.
I think so. And as I looked, you were talking, I was thinking back, it was a lot harder early on. I think the more that we have tried to work together on things, and I think our what we want to spend money on, what we have values on, line up a lot more than they did in the early years. I mean, we were still two individuals that were kind of going in different directions a lot of ways, and instead of being two individuals that are trying to do the best for our marriage together. And so it took some while to get there. And I think just as we've done life together, our values are very much in line. And so it makes it easier to do some of these things. So sometimes, you may hit some walls doing this, just push through it. Those are normal. Just figure out, okay, if this is an obstacle for us, how do we get around that? How do we deal with it? And begin to deal with it. and get the help you need if you need it to get it, because it will be so worth it. If you're gonna fight about money for 50 years, that doesn't sound like fun at all to me.
No,
at all.
No. No, for sure. And there are ways to stop and, make some progress instead, for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you do what we talk about all the time, God's first, spouse second, if you're putting God first and trying to do his plan for money, everything falls into place.
Yeah.
And it's not
really
easy. And it takes work and takes time and effort, but it's worth it because it's going to make a difference.
It really is. It really is. And so on that note, let's talk about tithing. So why does that belong in this conversation about budget tips, and what has it done for you and Nancy's finances?
We always gave. My parents gave. That was always, my mom and dad had for people that know what checkbooks are, they had two different.
There might be a couple.
I may put it differently, but two different accounts, and one was just their household everything, and one was what they called God's account.
Wow!
And that's what they tithed out of. That's what they gave extra out of. That's where I don't know how much they put in or what and everything, but that's really, so I grew up with that. And it was always kind of ingrained into me that that's just something you do. Nancy was very open to that, but just starting out, we didn't tithe. I think my mindset was we couldn't afford it. Some things like that. And so I think God just grew me. We heard some really good teaching on it by pastors, to the point where we realized, oh, okay, this is what you really want us to do, that this is something that, well, more than that, if you look in Malachi, it's like when God says, how do you rob me with tithes and offerings? Well, when I read that, I thought, well, wow, that puts a different perspective on it. And I think it's the deal was that God, the only thing, is that I think the only promise is that with money is that if we tithe, God's going to give us blessings in it. It's something that, and it doesn't always come back financially. Right. But I think just to know that you're working with him, that the money that you give, your tithe, is going to some place that's making a difference in giving through your local church. So you want to make sure you're giving, your church is doing a good job with the money that people are giving,
And most will publish their budget or they should also answer if you ask to see it.
Absolutely. Like that. So I think we kind of grew into the value of tithing. I remember when we first did, and I thought, okay, God, I'm trusting you with this. And, the thing that we never looked back. I mean, it was amazing. We, from that time on, early in the marriage, we kept tithing when things were good. We tithed when things were rough, and it always worked out. It's just, I heard people say, God does more with 90%, than with 100% when you give that tithe. And it was so true. It was something that, and I think some of it maybe come because our values kind of changed a little bit with it. Maybe we were a little more cautious how we spent money, some things like that. But I think knowing that God asks us to do this, tells us to do this, knowing that we're giving to a place or places that it makes a difference, that they're making a difference. I don't know. There's just a joy in that.
Yeah.
It really is. It's a way that we can kind of help. We've always given the 10% to the church, and then we give to some other things above that. I know some people do the 10% and they divide it between the church and other things that they want to give to. So I think that's just whatever God leads you to do. I kind of feel the Bible says that the tithes and offerings come to the church first, maybe because I was in seminary and everybody around me that was going to have a church said, well, I sure hope they get that,
Right. It's a little precarious.
Yes. But I think there's just something about it that's a principle that makes a difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I absolutely agree. I mean, this is something we started when we were early in marriage too, because before I hadn't really thought about it much. And I kind of thought you don't tithe until you have like an adult salary. But the reality is the sooner you start, the easier it is, because if you're not doing so well, it's a smaller number. And then if you are doing a little better, it's really hard to part with, And so that's something we started right off the bat and have never, ever regretted, because I think the way that it just protects our hearts from selfishness, protects our hearts from thinking that the whole plan or control is under our control. And just to see that like the Lord has given us the resources and ability even to earn money. We wouldn't be able to earn money unless he woke us up in the morning and gave us the abilities we have. And so I think it kind of reorients our mindset to the fact that we're not in control of that we're not the one who gets to dictate the outcome, but also to partner with him to do something in the world is pretty amazing. And I think we've definitely would agree that when you do tithe the 10%, the 90% you have left over goes a lot farther than you thought the 100% would go before.
Yeah. And the math doesn't work.
It doesn't. It does not make sense. And it's not that you get checks in the mail.
No.
It's nothing like that. I think we have seen, time and time again, certain things we've, prayed about, tithed about, we budgeted one really memorable time earlier in our marriage. We budgeted because we needed a couch. We had just like this gross one from Goodwill and that, we're just ready to move on. So we budgeted, I think it was $500 for a couch, and it was a really big deal. It was our first big purchase and it was big time. And so we were looking and we went to this store and found a couch that we fell in love with, but it was $2,000. And we were about to buy it right on the spot because we were like, we both like it. We're on the same page. We'll have to open a credit card here, but we're going to do it. We want this. And we're like, we're going to just leave and think about it and come back. And so we left and we both looked at each other like, what just happened? We were about to go so far over our budget into debt for this couch. And we just had to go, okay, that was crazy how quickly that selfishness or that desire just kind of took over.
Yes.
So we said, okay, we're just going to give part of our couch budget. We're going to give $250 to the church. We're just going to tithe it because our church was doing a big building campaign at the time. Yeah. And so we're like, we're just going to put it. It's a big sacrifice, but just to kind of reorient our minds to, because it scared us how quickly we were going to take on debt.
Yeah.
And like the same week, a couple of days later, Brian called and he was like, hey, I was just walking by this store. They've got the coolest couch. It's on sale. It was supposed to be $500. It's on sale for $250.
No
and
way.
So between the giving and the couch, we spent our $500 budget, but we got something that to us, God didn't give us a free couch, but the way he provided exactly in those amounts felt like such a gift and a blessing from him because our eyes were so open to see him at work when we decided we didn't want to go the route we were tempted to go.
That's so cool. And because I think a lot of places, obviously they're going to make it as easy as they can to get you to buy something. Yeah. I've heard so many stories similar to yours where there is an exact amount needed and that's what shows up. And I think it's how God just says, hey, this is me, Yeah. So don't mistake that. You got your couch, you gave the money that you so generously gave. You get 50% of what you're going to spend on the couch. So here's what you can do with the other 50% of that. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, I think, so if people are listening and never have tithes or something, do it, try it. Our church still says that, if you tithe for 3 months and God hadn't been faithful, then we'll give you the money back. And because he does and he will, and he begins to do something in our hearts, I think, when we begin to tithe. I think so. That's really pretty cool. Really pretty
I haven't known anyone who says they regret it personally.
No. Yeah. No, I haven't either.
Yeah. So that's kind of a funny one to throw into budgeting, but it really changes things. And I think it's worth considering for sure if that's not something that you're already doing today.
Exactly.
So another practical strategy, Dr. Kim, this is not from the Bible. This is from the mind of Dr. Kim, but I think it's really helpful too, is your 3-day rule for impulse buying. Will you explain that to us?
Yeah, I think it's something, if you want something, see something you want. And that's why we always have an amount in our budget that either one of us can spend without asking the other. But even with that, if it's something that I think I just run across and kind of like you guys with the couch, I can figure a way to get this. But I wait 3 days. During that time, I can pray about it. I can compare prices. And then after the 3 days, I can decide, usually I don't buy it. Honestly, I would say 90+% of the times I don't buy it. And the times that I have, I think I've made a better purchase because I've had a chance to compare some prices and make a better deal on it. It's hard for me. I love being impulsive. It is, I love the instant gratification, all that stuff.
Oh,
So
yeah,
it's something that I've really had to work on, but it makes sense and it works. And it keeps me from, in the big picture, I like it. Well, okay, because I did that and didn't buy those things, I've accumulated a little more money that I had to, when something came along that really did make sense and that would really add value to what I do or home or something, and was able to do that. So anyway, that's been really good for me. I think just the way I'm wired, it really helps me a lot. Some people have so much self-control that they don't need it.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any tool that can help, from where you are is a good thing. So that's good. Well, another thing that you've talked about that you and Nancy did was creating a house wish list. So what was your process for that and how did that help you guys?
Yeah, it was really, it was the list of things that we wanted for our home because like I said, when we started out, we didn't have anything hardly, we were just bare, but it was great. There were months that friends came over and we had friends over a lot and everybody's on the floor because nowhere else to sit. Yeah. And so we put this wish list together and it had furniture, just different things. So really the early was what we wanted for the house, how we wanted our house to look. Nancy drove that a lot, but I agreed. I benefited for every one of them. I got to put a TV on it. At that time, I don't know how big the screen was, not near what they are today.
No.
And so what we had this list, and we had it prioritized 1 through, I think we had we kept 10 or 12 on it at a time. We had extra money. We looked at what first was on the list and we bought it. And it was so good because when we got that extra money, it helped us, maybe me from being impulsive and saying, yeah, I know that's first on the list, but they've got that TV on sale that I want. I know it's number 9 on the list, but no, it just, and so it really worked. And it was kind of fun because then we'd say, okay, what's the next thing up on the list? Okay, what do we need to save to be able to get that? And so then we would be able to do it. And when we got the money, we'd go get it. And so it really helped us. It's self-discipline. I think it was positive that we did something together. We were in agreement on the list. We both benefited from everything on the list, and we didn't go into debt to get the things on the list. And so it helped us, I think, like if it took us a couple of months to save money for, I don't know, a chair or something like that, that we saw the kind of decisions we were making during that 2 months led up to being able to take that thing off the list and bring it home. And so I think that was kind of fun too. So there were a lot of benefits for it. It was really freeing. It wasn't constricting at all. It was very freeing. And just the fact that when we brought that, whatever it was, new home, it was like just a little victory. We did this, we don't have to use boxes as side tables anymore. We can throw those boxes away, stuff like that. It was very good that my dad, and I was working with him at that time too, in the supermarket business. We had all kinds of boxes, great boxes. Yeah. And so we had the best assortment of boxes in our home, functional than probably anybody did.
You're well furnished.
Yes, we were.
Oh, that's funny. I'm sure you were not sad to see them go, though.
No, because that was when, back then, some of the vegetables and stuff came in wooden boxes. They were slatted wooden boxes. Oh, they were great side tables.
Yeah.
And so.
That's so funny. Well, and I love too, when you talk about having lists together, that really takes us back to the shared goals, having shared goals, shared values. That is just such a huge thing. Anything that makes something a team project is always going to be more fun and I think more productive and unifying, which is such a good thing.
Absolutely. It's just, and when you just celebrate, wow, if it was a chair or something, we'd just sit in it or together or sit on my lap in the chair and just kind of go ahead, it was fun.
Cute. That's so fun. Yeah. Well, okay. One more really simple trick you've talked about that's helped you guys with staying on budget is the personal expenses allowance. Will you explain that? You've mentioned it a little bit, but what are the details of how you set that up?
Yeah, we just felt like, and I think I got this from, I can't remember, somebody that was struggling in this area. It had to be a friend that was kind of early marriage too. And she's always spending, she bought this thing and put it on the shelf. And I know it was only $15, but that was I can't believe she bought that, So what we decided was we were going to figure for our budget, X amount of dollars each month that each one of us could spend however we wanted. and the other person couldn't say anything bad about it. So if she bought something that was, I thought, oh, that is the stupidest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Never say that. Anything like that. It was like, that's so cool, honey, and so we did, it really helped us a lot. One, it gave us some freedom. Okay. Within this structure, we can do that. A couple of times I would save a couple of months and tell her that. And I said, because I think what I really want to buy with my money is this, and it's going to be more than 1 month. So I'm going to save it for 2 months and then I'm going to get that. So I don't know. It was just kind of the freedom to do that. And she couldn't, Nancy wouldn't say, well, why do you even want that anyway? It was no. So I think it was fun. I think it was something that we were both doing. It wasn't like it was one-sided. And, and over time we changed the amount some, went up a little bit as we were able to go up a little bit. And we didn't want our budget to be something that was restrictive. We wanted it to be more as a guide for our lives and our marriage. And so having that freedom with that, having entertainment money in the budget, I think it gave us some freedoms there that made the rest of the budget make a lot of sense for us, because it wasn't so constricting. It wasn't like, we can't do anything. Because I think when you get in that gets tough. And I think
it's tough.
Conflict comes and all kinds of stuff. So anyway, so I would suggest doing that. If, all you can put in there right now is $10 a week, put $10 a week, whatever it is.
Yes. Yeah. And I think we did the same thing early on as soon as we could, we did that because of the same reasons you said, because it's like, you're not going to agree on every single little purchase, and that's okay, because maybe one wants to use their $10 a week on some fancy coffee drinks, and the other one wants to save $10 every week until they have $100 and buy something a little more substantial.
Exactly.
But it makes it a lot easier to adhere to the budget when you have a little bit of flex room.
Yeah. Yeah. If she wanted to walk in Target and she knew that she could spend this, and that's great, but if she had to walk in Target and thought, oh my gosh, I don't have the money in the budget, this and that had to be frustrating.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great strategy too. So let's talk about saving. Any tips to get started on saving, if that's something that our listeners need help to get going on?
I think one thing that I had to figure out, that because we didn't save for what we did, we were saving for the specific things like the things on the list and stuff. But just in a bigger picture, it just didn't feel like we had the money to do that. And so I think what I learned from a guy that was really helpful, when did we meet him? Probably we'd been married a while. 10 years, 12 years, something like that. And he was just talking, just start small. And just set this side apart. Now, if you can go up later, do that. But he gave a deal, and I looked it up now because I think it's changed. But if you do $100 a month, you just set aside. If you get 10% interest, which that's what the past 30 years shows that's been the average. In 30 years, you'll have $217,000. Just by saving $100 a month. And the average of the last, what did I find here? Last 10-year S&P average is 12.58. So I mean, 10% is not unrealistic over time. And the other thing that this guy said is don't watch it. Just let it put the money in there, because some years maybe the interest is going to be a little lower. Others will be higher. And maybe you want to do some, for us, just putting it in something that we knew was going to return that was really safe was really important to us. We didn't really look at putting in something risky or things like that. But it is amazing over time what something can do. And if you can't do $100 a month, put something less than that. But I think it's a good habit to get into, just like we do with our tithe stuff now. Everything just automatically goes on. We do it online, which I think a lot of people do. I think everything we give to any organization is online now. In some ways, I kind of miss putting money into offering bucket at church, just because I thought that was kind of fun. But I like the fact that it's easy to do now, and it is. We do know we're doing it. So when it comes time for offering in church, we know, okay, well, we put the money in this week already. Just because it went online. And I think for me too, it eliminates any temptation to rob from your tithe money, or borrow from, not rob from, but borrow from your tithe money. All those are gone. We never, I like that it's just kind of set. It happens, and it's good. So as far as saving, just start with something and just
Yeah.
put it aside. Get in the habit of it. I think when you have it deducted or you have it automatically come out, to me, that's really easy if you never see it. Never shows up in our account like that. And then so our budget, everything is based on that. So our tithe doesn't show up. Our saving stuff doesn't show up. It's just already, and then we know what our budget is, but those things are already removed.
Yeah, that does make it a lot easier when it's just pre-decided, as you say.
It does. And it's not that temptation to spend something that you would really rather save or put in your tithe or something like that.
Yes, for sure. For sure. And I think too, when you know why you're saving, if you have as clear a goal as you can. One friend of mine, they have on the front of their savings, on the app where it has the different accounts, you can have the little picture that goes on the front. And he just put a picture of 2 rocking chairs looking at the sunset to remind him that when he and his wife are old and the kids are gone, they're retired, they want to have savings so that they can sit in the rocking chairs, look at the sunset. And it's a little visual reminder of like, what is the purpose of this? Oh yeah, I know exactly what the purpose is. I'm saving for, this future goal. That's
so cool. Yeah, I think it helps us. And then it goes back to the pre-deciding, which I think is so important, is that you just, that's what we decided we want in our later years. So everything we do today and tomorrow and the next week and all moves toward that same goal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I think too, in those times when you're on a tighter budget and when things are hard, it's harder to save. I think just recognizing it's a season, those, like you talked about with the kids being in the house, sometimes there's just surprises that come up. And I think seeing that that's the season and not forever is a helpful thing, because there are some ways to kind of wiggle into a different season or work on some things while still keeping all of your good budget practices in place.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm glad you said, because I think it's so important. I think we get so caught up in a season and thinking it's going to last forever. And they just don't.
No.
They don't. And so for us, the more we can look at a season that might be difficult, it's okay, we don't like this, but what's God teaching us? What do we need to learn out of this? How do we not just endure it, but grow through this season?
Yeah.
And we're not great at that all the time, but the times that we've done it well has made such a difference. And where you look back at that season, that was horrible, but God turned it around. Wow, look what we learned out of it, And so that's, I don't know. I always seem to learn best when things are a little rougher.
Oh,
and God knows this well, and so he knows what, and he's never going to, I think the fact that he's never going to do anything that's not good for us, we've got to keep that in perspective.
That's
that
true.
He is good and that he wants what's best for us, and it may not line up at all with what we think is best for us.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And you've made it through.
And we made it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, Dr. Kim, this has been a really helpful conversation about budgeting and how to get started. Do you have a final piece of advice for our listeners today?
Yeah, I'd sit down together and kind of start wherever you are in all of this that we've talked about today. Where do you want to go? Where are you now? What do you want to start doing that you're not doing? And kind of like what you're saying, what's your end goal with all of this? That it for most of us, I think it'd be at some point in our life, we're debt free. And we have enough saved or enough coming in or whatever it is that we can sit in those rocking chairs and look at the sunset.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
no matter how far off that seems or how close it seems.
Yeah. No, that's really good.
And I think it's never too late. It's never too late to start budgeting. It's never too late to start saving. Certainly never too late to start tithing. And so I would say pick something and start doing it.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great point. And so if you need help getting those things started, we do have some really helpful tools for you. We've got a online budgeting class from Dan and Kay Aki, our friends at Centsei. They've offered a class just for free, and you can take that class and get some really helpful tips towards starting budgeting and how to do that without making some common mistakes. We also have the 27 money questions every couple needs to ask resource that we have written for you just to help you get the ball rolling with talking about money, making some steps in the right direction, and taking care of some of the more difficult issues that money can present to a couple. So find the links for all those things in today's show notes. Make sure to reach out to us if there's anything you need by emailing at Awesome Marriage. It's at info@awesomemarriage.com or DMing us on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for taking time to listen to the podcast today. Have a great day and do something awesome for your marriage today.